Hi everyone, welcome to the channel After All That Years.
The day I discovered my wife's affair started like any other Tuesday, except I made the mistake of leaving the office 2 hours early. My name is Gregory, and after a decade of what I believed was a solid marriage to my wife Janet, I learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you most deeply. Janet and I never had children, not by choice really, but life just took us down different paths. We filled our days with weekend getaways, long conversations over dinner, and the comfortable rhythm of two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Or so I thought. Looking back now, I realize I'd been living in a carefully constructed illusion. That afternoon, I'd decided to surprise Janet with those white roses she'd always favored and maybe take her for coffee at that little place downtown she mentioned liking. She'd been pulling away recently, claiming her interior design business was overwhelming her with deadlines and difficult clients. I attributed it to work stress. Her profession could be demanding, with temperamental clients and tight schedules. When I pulled up near the coffee shop, I spotted Janet through the front window immediately. She was seated at a small table in the back corner, but she wasn't alone. Across from her sat a man I'd never seen before. Well-dressed, probably in his 40s, with the kind of confident posture that suggested he was used to getting his way. They were leaning toward each other, speaking in low voices, and Janet was laughing with an animation I hadn't witnessed in months. Her hand was resting on top of his across the table. For a brief moment, I tried to rationalize what I was seeing. Perhaps he was a new client, or maybe an old college friend who'd moved back to town. But there was an intimacy in their body language that made my chest tighten with dread. I grabbed the roses from the passenger seat and walked inside, my heart hammering against my ribs. Neither of them noticed my approach until I was standing directly beside their table. Janet's expression transformed the instant she saw me, the warmth in her eyes replaced by something between shock and guilt. The man turned to look at me with mild curiosity, as though I were simply another patron looking for a table. "Gregory," Janet stammered, quickly pulling her hand back from his. "What brings you here?" Instead of answering, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a business card I'd grabbed from the counter. On the back, I wrote 3 words, "Don't come home." I placed it on the table in front of her and turned to leave. The roses remained on their table as I walked out, Janet calling my name behind me. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. My legs felt like they might give out before I reached my car. Sitting in the driver's seat, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. The woman I'd trusted completely, shared everything with, was holding hands with a stranger like it was the most natural thing in the world. But as devastating as that moment was, what happened when she came home that evening would shake me even deeper. Janet walked through our front door around 7 that night, as if nothing had happened. She wasn't carrying my note, and she showed no signs of distress or remorse. Instead, she looked composed, almost rehearsed, like someone who'd spent hours preparing for a difficult conversation. I was sitting on the living room couch, staring at a blank television screen, replaying every detail from the coffee shop. The way she touched his hand, the genuine happiness in her laugh. It was as if I'd been watching a complete stranger who happened to share my wife's face. "Gregory," she said, setting her purse on the side table, "we should talk." I didn't respond or even look in her direction. She sighed and moved closer, perching on the edge of the couch. The casualness of her demeanor was almost insulting. "It's not what you're thinking," she began, her tone measured and careful, like she was addressing a child having a tantrum. "Really?" I finally turned to face her, because what I'm thinking is that my wife was on a date this afternoon, holding another man's hand and laughing like she hasn't laughed with me in years. So, if that's not what happened, please, explain what I actually saw. Janet flinched slightly but maintained her composure. "He's just a friend, Gregory. We were discussing work, that's all." I stood up and started pacing. "Friends don't hold hands, Janet. Friends don't gaze at each other like they're falling in love in the middle of a public coffee shop where their spouse might walk in." Her calm exterior cracked for just a moment. I caught a flash of guilt and fear, but she quickly masked it with indignation. "You're overreacting. You're making this into something it isn't. Nothing inappropriate happened." "Don't lie to me," my voice echoed through the room. "I saw everything, Janet. Don't stand there and insult my intelligence by pretending I'm imagining things." She crossed her arms, her jaw tightening. Fine. You want honesty? Yes, I've been spending time with him. But it's not what you think. It's not physical. It's complicated. Complicated? The word tasted bitter. What's complicated about cheating on your husband? I didn't cheat, she snapped. Not physically. We've been talking, yes, but it's emotional. I've been unhappy, Gregory, for a long time. And he listens to me. He understands me in ways you haven't for years. Her words hit like a physical blow. So this is my fault? You're saying this happened because I somehow failed you? She didn't answer, but her silence confirmed my worst fear. I shook my head, feeling my heart break into pieces. You could have talked to me, Janet. You could have told me you were unhappy. But instead, you went behind my back and found someone else to confide in. She stood up, arms still crossed defensively. I didn't plan for this, Gregory. It just happened. And honestly, I'm not even sure I want to try fixing this anymore. Those words cut deeper than anything else she could have said. Then why are you here? Why did you bother coming home? She hesitated before delivering the final blow. Because I wasn't ready to leave yet. I wanted to talk to you first. See if we could work out some arrangement. But now, I stared at her, feeling a mixture of rage, heartbreak, and complete disbelief. Get out, I said through clenched teeth. Gregory, please. No, you made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Pack your things and leave. I can't do this anymore. For a moment, I thought she might argue, but she simply nodded, turned, and walked upstairs to pack. As I listened to drawers opening and closing above me, I sat back down, feeling numb. My mind raced with questions about how long this had been going on, who this man was, and how I'd been so blind to what was happening in my own marriage. But what I discovered next would take this betrayal to a level I never could have imagined. It didn't take Janet long to pack. She came downstairs with a single suitcase, her expression unreadable. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to say something, but I wasn't interested in hearing more excuses. Where will you stay? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. After 10 years of marriage, I suppose I still felt some obligation to know she'd be safe. With a friend, she replied curtly, avoiding my eyes. Him? I asked bluntly. She froze, her grip tightening on her suitcase handle. That pause told me everything. You know what? Don't answer that, I said, waving dismissively. Just go. Without another word, she walked out, leaving me alone in a house that suddenly felt enormous and empty. I sat there for hours, staring at the spot where she'd stood, replaying the last few months in my mind. The late evenings at work, the sudden weekend trips, the constant stream of excuses. It all made sense now. Just when I thought I'd hit rock bottom, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You did the right thing, Gregory. She's not worth it. Thought you should know what she's been up to. Check your email. My hands trembled as I stared at the message. Who was this? How did they know what had just happened? I opened my laptop and logged into my email account. There was a new message with the subject line, The Truth About Janet. I hesitated, my cursor hovering over the message. Did I really want to know more? Of course I did. I clicked on the email, and what I found made my blood run cold. There were photographs, dozens of them, of Janet and the man from the coffee shop. They weren't just having innocent conversations. The images showed them at a hotel, walking hand in hand, laughing together, kissing. The timestamps went back months. Then there was a video file. It was grainy and appeared to have been taken through a window. But Janet's voice was unmistakable as she laughed and said, Gregory will never suspect anything. He's too trusting for his own good. I slammed the laptop shut, my chest tightening with a combination of fury and heartbreak. This wasn't just an emotional affair, she'd claimed. She'd been lying to my face, betraying our marriage, and apparently laughing about how naive I was. The worst part was that I had no idea who had sent these materials, but I was determined to find out. When I did, I'd get to the bottom of just how extensive this deception had been. Sleep was impossible that night. My mind churned with questions I couldn't answer. Who had sent the email? Why had they sent it? How did they know so much about Janet's betrayal? By morning, my exhaustion had transformed into resolve. I decided to respond to the mysterious text from the previous evening. My message was direct. Who are you? Why are you doing this? The response came within minutes. A friend. Let's just say I know Janet better than you think. She's not who you believe she is. If you want the complete story, meet me at Riverside Park at 2 this afternoon. I'll be wearing a dark blue jacket. I stared at the message, debating whether I should go. This felt like something out of a thriller novel, but my curiosity was stronger than my caution. If there was more to Janet's betrayal, I needed to know. By 1:45, I was sitting in my car near the park entrance, my heart racing and palms sweating. What was I doing? Meeting a stranger who claimed to have information about my wife's secrets. It seemed absurd, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this person had answers I desperately needed. At exactly 2 I saw someone in a dark blue jacket walking toward a bench beneath a large maple tree. Taking a deep breath, I got out of my car and approached them. The person was a man, probably in his late 30s, with a serious expression. I could see enough of his face to know I didn't recognize him. "You're Gregory?" he asked, his voice quiet but steady. "Yes. And you are?" "Call me William," he said, gesturing for me to sit down. "I used to work with Janet. We were close for a while, but I learned the hard way what kind of person she really is. I kept some distance between us as I sat." "What's that supposed to mean?" William pulled out his phone and handed it to me. "See for yourself." On the screen was a series of text messages between Janet and someone saved as Russell. The messages were explicit, filled with details about their meetings and plans to keep me unaware of their relationship. "She's been seeing Russell for almost a year," William said. "He's married too, by the way. I found out when I caught them together at a company holiday party. She didn't even seem bothered that I saw them. Just told me to mind my own business." I stared at the messages, feeling nauseated. "Why are you telling me this? Why now?" "Because I've been where you are," he said, his voice softening. "I know what it feels like to be made a fool of. I thought you deserved to know the truth before she destroys you completely." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to thank him, but another part wanted to scream. This wasn't just betrayal, it was calculated humiliation, planned and executed right under my nose. As I handed his phone back, William added, "She won't stop, Gregory. People like Janet don't change. I learned that lesson the hard way." I left the park feeling more broken than before, but I also felt something else, an overwhelming need to take control. Janet thought she could manipulate me indefinitely, but she was about to discover just how wrong she was. Driving home from the park, I could barely keep my hands steady on the steering wheel. William's words echoed in my mind. "She won't stop." That thought infuriated me, but it also brought an unexpected clarity. Janet had lied, cheated, and humiliated me. I'd spent the last day drowning in shock and heartbreak, but now I needed to focus. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. When I got home, I immediately opened my laptop and started researching. William had mentioned Russell's name, and it didn't take long to find him on social media. Russell was everything I wasn't: polished, charismatic, and from his family photos, completely dishonest. He had a wife, 2 children, and a beautiful house in an upscale neighborhood. The thought of him sitting in my favorite restaurant, stealing my wife while maintaining his perfect family facade, made my blood boil. I saved screenshots of his posts, his professional profile, and anything else I could find. I didn't have a complete plan yet, but I wanted to be prepared. Janet and Russell thought they were untouchable. I was about to prove them wrong. As I studied the screen, my phone buzzed with a message from Janet. "I need to pick up the rest of my belongings tomorrow. Will you be there?" Her audacity was breathtaking. She'd barely left, and now she wanted to stroll back in like nothing had happened. I typed back, "I'll be here. Come at 5:00. The next day, I spent hours preparing for her arrival. I printed the photos and text messages William had shown me and arranged them neatly on the dining room table. I also printed screenshots of Russell's family photos, just to make sure she understood the full scope of what I knew. At exactly 5, Janet walked in. She was dressed perfectly, as always, her expression a mixture of guilt and irritation. "I'm just here to collect my things," she said curtly, heading toward the stairs. "Not yet," I said, stepping in front of her. "We need to have a conversation." She rolled her eyes. "Gregory, we've already covered this." "No, this time you listen," I interrupted, pointing toward the dining room table. "Sit down." Her eyes moved to the table, and I watched her face go pale when she noticed the stack of papers. Slowly, she sat down, her hands fidgeting nervously. "What is this?" she asked, though I could tell she already knew. "This," I said, spreading the papers out in front of her, "is everything. The text messages, the photographs, the hotel visits, Russell's life, his wife, his children." You thought I was too oblivious to figure it out, but I know everything now. Janet stared at the evidence, opening and closing her mouth like she was struggling to breathe. Gregory, I can explain. No. I slammed my hand on the table, making her jump. You've done enough talking. Now it's my turn. I took a deep breath, trying to control my voice. You lied to me. You cheated on me. And you didn't even have the decency to hide it well. You sat there laughing at how trusting I was, thinking I'd never discover the truth. Well, I did. And now you're going to face the consequences. Her composure finally cracked, and for the first time, I saw genuine panic in her eyes. What do you mean? What are you planning to do? I leaned closer, my voice low and firm. I'm not going to hurt you, Janet, but I'm also not going to let you walk away from this without consequences. You've destroyed our marriage, humiliated me, and lied to my face repeatedly. I hope it was worth it. She didn't respond, her eyes darting between the papers in my face. For once, Janet had nothing to say. As she gathered her belongings and left the house for the final time, I watched her go, feeling a strange combination of anger, relief, and emptiness. But I knew this wasn't over. Janet and Russell had built their relationship on lies and deception. Now, it was my turn to expose them. The silence in the house after Janet left was overwhelming. For the first time in years, I was truly alone. But rather than dwell on the emptiness, I focused on what needed to happen next. Janet and Russell thought they could move forward without facing any consequences. That wasn't going to happen. My first step was straightforward. I composed an email to Russell's wife, Beverly. I kept it brief but clear, attaching screenshots of the text messages and photographs, along with a simple message. I thought you deserved to know the truth about your husband. If you'd like to discuss this, please let me know. I hesitated before clicking send, wondering if I was crossing a line. But then I remembered Janet laughing in that coffee shop, dismissing our marriage like it meant nothing. I clicked send and felt a strange sense of satisfaction. The next morning, I received a response. Beverly wanted to meet. She suggested a quiet coffee shop across town, away from her neighborhood, and I agreed. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a strained expression. Beverly was elegant, the kind of woman who maintained her dignity, even in crisis. Gregory? She asked as I approached. I nodded and sat across from her. Beverly, thank you for meeting me. She wasted no time. Is it true, all of it? Yes, I said, sliding additional photos and messages across the table. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, but Russell and my wife Janet have been having an affair for almost a year. She looked at the evidence, her hands trembling slightly. I suspected something, she admitted, her voice barely audible. But I never thought it was this extensive. We talked for nearly an hour, piecing together timelines and filling in gaps. By the end of our conversation, Beverly was determined to confront Russell, and I couldn't blame her. As we prepared to leave, she turned to me and said, "They've underestimated us, Gregory. Let's show them they were wrong." Her words resonated with me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I wasn't fighting this battle alone. But the real confrontation was still ahead, and I knew it wouldn't be as civilized as this meeting. The day Beverly confronted Russell was one I'll never forget. She had texted me that morning. "I'm doing it today. Be prepared for whatever comes next." I wasn't sure what she meant, but I didn't have to wait long to find out. By noon, my phone was buzzing with messages. One from Janet and two from an unknown number that I quickly realized was Russell. Janet's message was short and furious. "What the hell did you do, Gregory?" Russell's messages were filled with rage and barely coherent threats. "You're a coward, Gregory. Involving Beverly? What's wrong with you? Stay out of my life, or you'll regret it." I almost laughed at the irony of his threats. Stay out of his life? He'd been interfering in mine for a year. Beverly had clearly been thorough. Later that evening, she called me and recounted everything. She had confronted Russell with the evidence, and predictably, he had denied everything at first. But when she showed him the photographs and text messages, his excuses fell apart. "He tried to blame me," Beverly said over the phone, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and triumph. "He said it was my fault because I wasn't supportive enough. Can you believe that?" "I can," I replied bitterly. "It's the same excuse Janet used." "What are you going to do now?" Beverly asked. "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. But I'm not letting this slide. That night, Janet showed up at my house unannounced. She looked disheveled, a far cry from her usual polished appearance. "You've ruined everything," she said as she stepped inside without invitation. "Ruined what, Janet?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Your perfect little affair? Your chance to keep living a double life while I remained in the dark?" Her eyes flared with anger. "You had no right to drag Russell's family into this. This was between us." "Between us?" I shot back. "You made it everyone's business the moment you started sneaking around with him. Don't stand here and play the victim, Janet." She opened her mouth to respond but seemed unable to find words. For once, she looked defeated. "What do you want, Janet?" I finally asked, my voice quieter but no less firm. "I don't know," she said, her voice breaking. I didn't think it would come to this." I shook my head, feeling a pang of pity that I quickly suppressed. "It's too late for regrets. You made your choice. Now, you have to live with the consequences." She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out without another word. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. The fallout was only just beginning. The days following Janet's visit were anything but quiet. My phone didn't stop ringing with calls from mutual friends, family members, and even some of Janet's colleagues who had somehow learned about the situation. News traveled fast, and it wasn't long before people started choosing sides. Janet, unsurprisingly, positioned herself as the victim. She told anyone who would listen that I had overreacted, that I was vindictive and trying to destroy her life. Russell, on the other hand, went silent. I suspected Beverly had him cornered at home, but I didn't care enough to confirm it. What I hadn't anticipated was how deeply this would affect my own social circle. Friends I thought were loyal began questioning my actions, wondering why I had exposed Janet so publicly, why I had involved Russell's family. One of our mutual friends, Amanda, called me one evening. "Gregory, I just heard about everything. Are you okay?" I hesitated. Amanda and Janet had been friends for years, and I wasn't sure if I could trust her. But I decided to be honest. "Honestly, no, Amanda. I'm not okay. Janet cheated on me, lied to me, and humiliated me. And now I'm somehow the villain for exposing it." Amanda sighed. "Look, I'm not saying what she did was right, but maybe you could have handled it differently. People are talking, Gregory. You've made things messy." Her words stung, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Messy? Amanda, she betrayed me. What did you expect me to do? Just sit quietly and let her walk all over me?" Amanda was silent for a moment before saying, I don't know. It's complicated." "It's not complicated," I replied, my voice cold. She made her choice. Now, she gets to deal with the consequences. The call ended shortly after, leaving me angrier than before. It seemed like everyone wanted to avoid the hard truth that Janet and Russell were the villains in this story, not me. But amidst all the chaos, there was one moment of clarity. Beverly called me again, her tone more determined than before. "Gregory," she said, "I think it's time we take this further." "What do you mean?" I asked, unsure of where she was heading. "I've spoken to a lawyer," she said, "and if you're willing, I think we should both file formal complaints against them. Russell's company has strict policies about workplace affairs. If we go through with this, he could lose his position, and Janet might face consequences too." I paused, letting her words sink in. It felt drastic, but at the same time, they had crossed every boundary imaginable. "Let's do it," I said finally. "It's time they face the full weight of what they've done." As I hung up the phone, I realized that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was finally taking control of my life again. The fallout wasn't over yet. If anything, it was just beginning. A week after agreeing to Beverly's plan, the wheels were in motion. We both filed formal complaints against Russell and Janet. Beverly had collected substantial evidence from Russell's phone and work emails to support our claims, while I provided additional documentation of their affair. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about accountability. The fallout was immediate. Russell's company launched an internal investigation, and within days, he was placed on administrative leave. Janet, whose work often involved collaboration with Russell's firm, was also questioned. Their supposedly discreet affair had been anything but, and word spread quickly among their professional colleagues. Their reputations began to crumble. Janet called me several times during the investigation, but I didn't answer. She left voicemails filled with a mixture of anger, regret, and desperate pleas. "Gregory, you've made your point. Stop this now, please. We can work this out." But there was nothing left to work out. Beverly and I stayed in touch throughout the process. She proved to be a fierce ally, and I admired her strength. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't fighting this battle alone. By the end of the month, the results were clear. Russell was terminated for violating company policy regarding workplace relationships. Janet's contract with her firm wasn't renewed. Both of them had burned bridges they couldn't rebuild. With the dust finally settling, I started to focus on rebuilding my life. The house, once filled with painful memories, began to feel like mine again. I redecorated, removing any trace of Janet's presence. It was cathartic, like shedding an old skin that no longer fit. One evening, while unpacking a box of old photographs, I came across one from our wedding day. Janet looked radiant, and I remembered how happy I'd been in that moment. It was a bittersweet reminder of what I thought we had. I didn't hate her anymore, not entirely. The anger had faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. As for Beverly, she became an unexpected friend. We met for coffee occasionally, sharing updates and reflecting on everything that had happened. She was moving forward too, focusing on her children and her own sense of closure. One day she said something that stuck with me. "You can't let this define you, Gregory. It's part of your story, but it's not the whole book." She was right. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Looking back now, I realize that sometimes the most devastating betrayals can lead to the most profound personal growth. Janet's affair didn't just end our marriage. It revealed who she truly was and, perhaps more importantly, who I was capable of being when pushed to my limits. I learned that I was stronger than I thought, more resilient than I'd ever imagined. The man who had sat in that coffee shop, watching his world crumble, was not the same man who now lived alone, but not lonely in a house that finally felt like home. The experience taught me that trust, once broken, can never truly be repaired. But it also taught me that betrayal, as devastating as it is, doesn't have to define the rest of your story. Sometimes the end of one chapter is simply the beginning of another one, where you get to be the author of your own life.